rescuing an American, but there's a lot of shit that happened, and so, the narrative itself, I don't want to sit here and say, that people love to just exaggerate, but things get exaggerated in your mind, and we'll tell another story, that um that one's probably not as exaggerated because it doesn't need to be. But what's funny is I've heard people tell that story that weren't even there. And there's always, little additions that are added in
Wait,
over
wait, what
time.
story? What story are you talking about now?
You wanted to talk about the Iraqi brigade,
Yeah,
the
well, let's
tank
pivot.
brigade.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
well, this is a perfect segue. Let's get into the Iraqi Tank Brigade.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was actually the Kurdish, but well, hold on. Let me, so my point being is things do just, in our minds and everything else, they do just kind of get exaggerated. Listen, at the end of the day, she was an American soldier deployed to a foreign country doing something that was incredibly important. She was taken captured by the enemies of her country. Everybody else but her died. That alone deserves her any kind of recognition, any kind of prestige um, that can be afforded her. She deserves that, and she doesn't just deserve it for herself. She deserves it for the, comrades that died to her left and right. So if we embellish some stories, there may be a little bit more gunfire than there actually was. Oh well, that's okay. She's an American hero at the end of the day. So yeah, so if you want to dive into the Kurdish, this is many years later. Okay, so this is shoot, 2007. Yeah, 2007. Veterans Day 2007. Hill 666 as it's commonly called, or Veterans Hill. It has a lot of different names. Yeah, just a mission like any other mission. We did an offset infill. Meaning so an offset infill is where we just land off the target, 3 to 5K, so they can't hear the helicopters coming in, and then we walk in silently. And we were walking in and we saw that there was a big hill like kind of off to the left. And so I'm platoon sergeant at the time. This is Bravo Company 275 and second platoon. And I told him, hey, let's just like take a wide berth around the hill. We don't need to walk right by the hill. So we start skirting to the right. And as we get close to the hill, an ISR, for whatever reason, normally we had multiple usual platforms, but for whatever reason, we were only asking them to clear part of our route. And it was mostly we were just asking them to clear the route like near hardball, like when there was hardball and stuff like that. We weren't asking them to clear the open desert because, I mean, why would you, because we had limited platforms back then. So they were watching pretty much the target. So anyway, we walk and we get close to the hill, and like one rifle fire comes in and lands like right in front of my team. My lead squad, our lead squad, and we're like, whoa, where the hell did that come from? So everybody kind of stops, and then multiple rounds start coming from the hilltop. And we're like, whoa, what in the hell? So, my lead squad kind of, lays down, a little bit of fire and everything else. And then, we call in, the JTAC and all those guys that call in, the ISR, they're like, hey, we're taking gunfire, like troops in contact, all this different kind of stuff. So, they can't immediately, because, we're still, I think we'd just gotten off the helicopter. Maybe we would walk like half a K. It wasn't very far. We'd walked. And so it took them a minute to get into position so they could actually get eyes on this hilltop. But by this point, now machine guns are in play on top of the hill, PKMs, like, the fire is getting pretty intense. And my platoon starts moving around, basically getting into suppressive fire positions and everything else, launching 203s, all this different kind of stuff on top of this hill because the fire is getting pretty intense. And then the RPGs. And this was the first time we'd seen an RPG like this. We'd seen RPGs, but like an RPG, coming directly over your head, it was kind of the first time. And I remember it because it streaks overhead, this big orange bright light, right? And everybody stops shooting. We're like, what the hell is that? And then it lands behind us and explodes. We're like, RPGs, so everybody starts shooting and firing and stuff like that. And I maneuver with the Gustav team, get them into position because now we are close enough. I can identify bunkers on top of the hill. And I'm like, holy shit, that's weird. So, we start launching Gustavs, into these bunkers and everything else. And, I don't remember how many rounds we had, but we had, we did, a couple like direct, and then we did a couple like on area bursts and all this stuff. Yelling at the PL behind me, like, hey, get the JTAC, like, we need to start, like, doing some call for fire missions on this hilltop and everything else. And okay, so we got RPGs coming in, we got PKMs coming in. My guys are freaking, laying the scunion, and then we see coming up a road behind us, a trail of Humvees coming. Like, oh shit. Okay. They come up behind us and they're white light, just white light central. And they come up behind us. So now we got the hill right here. We're right here. And by the way, this is open desert. Okay. But the only things there is to hide behind are boulders like this size. Okay. They ain't very big. And then this convoy starts opening up with 50 cal and Mark 19 and everything else behind us. And they're shooting at us. So now we got this hilltop. Luckily, they're shooting over the top of us for the most part. So that's why we hadn't broke contact, because they were shooting behind us for the most part. But now we got 50 cal and all this other shit coming in from the other direction. Well, luckily, somebody in that convoy must have had like night vision, even though they were under white light. We start lasing them, and that only lasted like a few minutes. And then they're like, okay, that's like American forces, and they boot, scoot, and boogie out of there. Like, thank God. Okay, at least we got that problem solved. Then the JTAC had a bright idea. He's like, okay, hey, I'm gonna do a low pass with the F-16s that had come into station. They checked into station as soon as we got troops in contact. So they do a low flyby, right? Sounds like a great idea, and we're trying to do like a show of force, like, hey, these are Americans, because I'm sorry, back up. We realized that this was some kind of Iraqi base. And the reason we realized that is because of the tents and everything that was kind of behind. And we could see like 5 tons and Humvees and tanks. We could actually see tanks like parked. So we're like, okay, this is obviously American. So we'd realized, hey, it was friendly, it was friendlies. So, while we're laying suppressive fire, we kind of adjusted a little bit, like we were just trying to kind of get them to stop, not necessarily like shoot and kill, like I stopped shooting Gustav and all this stuff. Like, as soon as we realized it was American, we're like, okay, well, what we thought was American, we're like, okay, stop shooting Gustav, all this different kind of stuff. 203 is we're just trying to kind of lay suppressive fire to get them to stop, right? Anyway, so sorry, I forgot that part. Been a while. F-16s do a low flyover. Well, because of all the RPGs and everything else being launched, it set off the flares. So now we've got F-16 diversionary flares coming over the top of us and illuminating us.
Oh,
and now the fire starts to get more accurate because now they can see us better. So that's when things got really, really squirrely. And I remember like sitting off to the side, and two things crossed my mind. First one was I yelled back to the JTAC. I said, "Don't fucking do that again." And then the second thing is I told my medic who was sitting beside me, like, "Get ready. We're probably gonna start taking casualties now," because basically they'd adjusted and realized they were off target. Now they're shooting amongst guys, and I see guys like RPGs, hit next to guys, and guys getting thrown and all this different kind of stuff. Like, okay, what in the fuck are we gonna do here? Because like breaking contact still wasn't a good idea because there was still fire and things coming, our mortars and stuff like that coming from the other side of the hill, but landing behind us. So like coming about, and obviously we're not gonna sit there and like, do basically a flanking maneuver to try to take this hill because there was a lot of people behind this hill. So we're just like basically, as the saying goes, stuck in between a rock and a hard place. And then it got worse. And we didn't see it at first. We heard it at first. And it was a giant train followed by a shockwave coming over our head. And again, we're like, what in the hell was that? It was the tanks. They had fired up the tanks and they were maneuvering on us to flank us. And so now we got tank rounds coming over the top of us and firing at us. And we're like, and I just remember, you talk about, you were talking earlier about Josh laughing, in the end. I remember I'm like tucked in behind like this like little like rock pile with my PL and the JTACs like down at our feet. And I remember laughing, being like, it can't get any worse. And then the JTAC going, "Are you kidding me? Tanks? Fucking tanks?" you know. So we're tossing around ideas. Like we're thinking like, how in the hell are we going to get them to realize we're American, you know? Because we tried everything, you know, and nothing, everything just made it worse. You know, the flares, VS-17 panels, individual pengun flares. I mean, everything. It just made it worse. It made the fire more accurate. So we're like, you know, what are we literally going to do here? And lasers were, you know, completely ineffective. They obviously had no knots. And I don't remember, you know, Chad Jenkins, who is a PL, he says that I said it. I think he's full of shit. I don't think I'm that brilliant, so I definitely wouldn't have said it. Brandon Temple denies it. He was a JTAC. He says he didn't say it either. So it's one of those things that'll just, we'll never know who really said it. But basically, somebody's like, basically said, land the Apaches in front of the tank. And sure as shit, these Apaches, bad mofo, man, came down on the road and landed right in front of the lead tank. And the pilot got out and ran up to the tank, climbed up, and basically said, "Hey, those are Mustino said, hey, those are Americans you guys are shooting at." It took a few minutes, you know, but basically it got relayed up, and you know, the fire stopped, and we exfilled and got on helicopters and went home for the night.
That is
And
without a doubt one of the most insane stories that has ever been shared on this. I'm in a state of shock right now. Is that is that the fiercest like fire you had ever taken?
Definitely with the tank rounds, yeah. With the tank, because I mean, I've taken, you know, machine gun fire, RPG fire, like I've definitely seen more. Like I definitely have. But the tank rounds, man, oh man. You know, and I think of guys that have taken, you know, 105 artillery fire and everything else, you know, going back to like, you know, Vietnam and Korean War and all that stuff and World War II. And you know, you talk about shell shock and stuff like that, where people become inoperable because of how much of that is coming in. I get it. I mean, it didn't even hit that close to us, but just it coming over and just the shock wave, like literally, I'm not kidding you, like just the shock wave, like pulling your helmet off, like, and you know, turning your ear pro and like pushing guys over. I mean, just the shock wave of it alone is unbelievably jarring. I mean, it was it's hard to describe. Um, and I had a very rambunctious platoon. Okay. There were a bunch of meat eater, just bad, the baddest mofos. Okay. Not a word was spoken on that helicopter ride back. And well, we all went to like, we literally immediately, like, everybody went to chow. I stopped by the jock and got on the phone with the battalion commander. Actually called me, and I'll remember it to this day, and I'll have mad respect for this guy for a lot of different reasons. General Carrillo, okay, you know, current CENTCOM commander or CG. He literally called me and he said, "We fucked up. We didn't do our pre-check stuff and checking on friendly forces that were in the area, blue force check before. We didn't do a good enough job. We missed this. So this was actually an Iraqi uh infantry brigade with brand new Kurdish tanks that the Kurdish had just bought, and it was an entire Kurdish tank brigade. They literally just gotten them. And the SF team that was supposed to be there to, you know, basically, you know, control stuff and everything else and advise for them had decided like that night, like an hour before that whole event, to like do a supply run, basically, like to the nearest fob, because we weren't that far from like some fob or something. And so they weren't there. So yeah, you know, so you know, they if they had been there, night vision, nods, radios, all this different kind of stuff, we could have talked to them. But I mean, my guys didn't talk like through chow. Like it was definitely. And then you know, the next morning, you know, I wake up and everything else, and you know, they're like, oh hey, you know, we're just think we're gonna put you guys in like an off cycle for, you know, 24 hours. I'm like, absolutely not. Nope, nope. We need to do something tonight, make up something. We need to get out the door. Like my guys weren't shell shocked, but it was definitely jarring. And the unbelievable thing is we didn't lose one guy.
Well,
Couple
that is
yeah,
the I was
couple
waiting for
pieces
that.
of shrapnel, but nothing. Yep.
I was waiting for that shoe to drop in the story. It's a miracle that nobody got killed given the situation you found yourself in.
Yeah, it's wild. So they actually used it for a while. Somebody told me in the captain's career course, I believe, they used that as a vignette for a while, basically to show decision making progress or process and like how to de-escalate. And basically the way it would go is guys would throw out options like, hey, here's how here's the scenario, but then hey, here's how you de-escalate it, and here's how you, and they would go, oh, they did that, oh, they did that. Okay, hey, now that you haven't de-escalated, now a friendly convoy comes up behind you and adds to the reason. Okay, what are you going to do now? Try to de-escalate it. Okay, nope, none of that works. Now, hey, now you got tanks. And like literally, one of the instructors that was telling me this, he's like, not only could no one ever come up with what happened, the Apache landed on the road, but two, people couldn't believe that it actually happened and that no one died.
The whole thing, start to finish, is absolutely crazy. I mean, it's like I said, it's one of the best stories I've ever heard in 2 years of doing this.
I don't know about that, man. You've had some
It,
pretty amazing guests.
it's certainly up there without a doubt. I do want to ask you a question on your opinion of when you were fighting kind of regime loyalists
Mm,
compared to hardcore terrorists who might have come in from Africa or Jordan,
mm.
or